I currently work with California prisoners who are in state prison in some form of solitary confinement, many of them in the security housing units at Pelican Bay and Corcoran State Prison, where they're kept in solitary confinement indefinitely, meaning there's no set date on when they'll be released from solitary confinement. Some of these people, like Hugo Pinnell, have been in there for over 40 years. They haven't committed any kinds of acts of violence or crimes while they've been in prison. They're mainly there because of who they associate with, who they're friends with, what they read, what they draw, what they think about, these types of things. So in response to these very inhumane conditions, the prisoners themselves organized amongst themselves and organized a human rights movement in 2011. And they launched this human rights movement by going on a massive hunger strike in which over 6,000 prisoners participated in 2011. They resumed their hunger strike again later in 2011 and had over 12,000 prisoners join. And most recently this year in July, they went on another hunger strike where they were joined by over 30,000 prisoners. This is about a third of California's prison population. So we see that many people who are not even in solitary confinement joined in solidarity with the brothers that are in solitary confinement because they know how bad solitary confinement is. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially since Herman Wallace was released and transitioned, is what it does to people in solitary confinement to see their brothers go through these types of things that they go through, dealing with losing loved ones, dealing with losing each other, dealing with suicides. The day that Herman Wallace was released, I was actually at Pelican Bay the morning that the announcement came out, and there was not one person that I met with that didn't immediately bring him up before anything else, like before even hello, some of them. They were just so excited and overjoyed with the news that he was being released. But the next day when I went to go visit, after it had settled in a little bit, I noticed that there was a lot more anger, and there was a lot of them were furious, really, that it took so long for him to be released, because a lot of these people have lived with seeing the effects of solitary confinement, seeing people die in solitary confinement, seeing people's families be torn apart in solitary confinement, and even them trying to help each other in these sorts of instances is criminalized, right? If somebody loses a loved one and other people try to reach out to him and provide comfort, send them a card, send them a note, all of this is more reason to keep them in solitary confinement even longer. This is something that's no longer hidden. It's not, we still have programs like COINTELPRO, and in the past there was a COINTELPRO for prisons called Operation PRISAC, and we obviously still have these things, but they don't need them anymore. They're doing it very openly and very plainly. It says in their regulations, if you read about Black political ideology or Black culture, you're a gang member. If you write or draw Aztec or Mayan type things, then you're a gang member. None of this is hidden anymore. And this is one of the main reasons that it's time for us to unite as the prisoners did and support their demands. Their demands are very reasonable. They're asking for an end to long-term solitary confinement. They're asking for there to be a cap on it, probably somewhere between 2 to 5 years, which is still a very long time. But in California right now, there is no cap. There's, like I said, people that have been in there for over 40 years without committing any kinds of crimes. They're asking for better food. Even the food that they're served twice a day. They get their breakfast and a sack lunch, and in the evening they get dinner. The food portions are very small. They can't keep them full off of these portions. They're often not even edible, rotten, moldy. Recently somebody had, one of the Black Muslim prisoners found a big blob of ink under his food. So there's a lot of problems that's happening with the food, and one of their demands was better food. And even if they can afford to buy better food, their access to canteen is severely restricted. So if you're in general population, your family could send you 4 packages a year filled with food and other items. You're allowed to spend, I think, like $50 or $60 a month at the canteen. If you're in solitary confinement, you only get 1 package a year. So even if you can afford food, you can't have your family send it to you. You only get to spend about 30% of what general population prisoners spend in canteen. So I think they get to spend maybe like $20 or $30 a month instead of like the 50 or 60. So these are obviously very punitive measures that have nothing to do with security, have nothing to do with safety. It has everything to do with breaking these people and making them submit to the will of the prison officials, and that's why a lot of them are in there. In 2012, these same prisoners that organized the hunger strike came out with an agreement to end hostilities. This was a very historical and important moment in California prison history because there's been decades of tensions and rivalries amongst the prisoners, either based on race or based on geography, and these were instigated and created by the prison administration and prison guards in the 1960s with the rise of the prison movement. And these have continued for so long, and it's been one of the main ways that the prison has been able to maintain some semblance of control over the prisons and by preventing these people from communicating and preventing them from uniting. And despite all of this, still in these concrete tombs, these prisoners were able to communicate with each other. And despite knowing the retaliation that they were going to face and have faced, despite knowing that it was very likely that one of them would be killed and it would be called a suicide, despite knowing that their family members would be targeted and would be harassed continuously for advocating on their behalf or even for continuing to visit them, they still put all of this aside and said, we are going to come together and we're going to unite and we're going to use diplomatic means to address our differences because we're not the worst of the worst. We're not what the Department of Corrections is saying that we are, and and we can show that by doing it our way, by uniting, by fighting nonviolently, peacefully, by choosing to fight by refusing our food instead of fighting with each other. And this was seen as a very big threat to the prison system. I mean, every single person that participated in the hunger strikes got written up with a disciplinary violation. This is going to impact people's parole eligibility. This is impacting, some people got sent to ADSED, some people's family visits got canceled, some people's had their TVs and radios taken away. They took very huge risks to do this, and a lot of them know that the changes that they're fighting for won't even impact them because change happens so slow. A lot of them know that these protests that they're taking part in now are really, they're doing it to benefit the people that are going to come after them, with the hope that people won't come after them in these security housing units and we can minimize the use. Some of the other demands were for more programs within the prisons, educational programs, religious programming. Right now they don't get anything. They're in their cells for about 22 and a half hours. They're allowed out to a bigger cell for 90 minutes of recreation. If they get mental health treatment, it's as routine as a psychiatric staff coming to their door and asking them if they're okay in front of everyone else. Nothing's confidential. If they get visits, it's only for an hour behind glass. A lot of them haven't touched their family members in decades. So these are reasonable changes that the prison could implement immediately and could end up producing better human beings and result in a lot of people that I've spoken to that came out of solitary confinement credit their transformation in prison to other prisoners and the solidarity that they built with other prisoners and what they learned, whether it's learning how to read and write or whether it's learning to deal with other people. They learned it from the people that they were isolated with. So if these people were able to be out in general population, there could be monumental changes made, and the prison guards know this, and this is part of the reason that they're stuck in solitary confinement. A lot of these guys are also brilliant jailhouse lawyers and routinely win cases against the CDCR for violations of their civil and human rights. When they were in general population, they were teaching other prisoners legal skills, and this is another reason why they're a threat and they need to be kept in solitary confinement. This whole practice of placing people in solitary confinement has been used as a tool to repress political thinkers and legal thinkers for decades now in California, and it's time for it to stop. Right now, the Department of Corrections has complete authority and control over how this is done. They even changed the regulations a couple years ago to make it possible for them to validate members of the public as members of prison gangs. So what does this mean for somebody that's supporting people in prison? What does it mean for those of us on the outside who may enjoy Mayan or Aztec artwork or might like to read works by George Jackson or Malcolm X? What does it mean that a state agency can validate us as members of prison gangs without any kind of due process or any kind of say-so by a court or no representation, no judge? What does it say for activists who are now supporting these prisoners? It says a lot. This one state agency is being given a free hand to criminalize anyone, and we see this happening all the time. And what's happening right now in California prisons has really the potential to change, and it has in many ways changed the discourse of how we're talking about this practice. I remember in 2011, when we were dealing with media, we had a hard time even getting media to say solitary confinement. They were using the Department of Corrections words. They were saying inmates who are segregated, inmates who are kept apart from the general population. Now they're saying solitary confinement. Now they're calling it torture. The mainstream media is using our language. And this is very much in part due to the prisoners and how they've spearheaded this movement and really set the tone for what's to come. Now we have a national dialogue about solitary confinement. The whole world is paying attention, really, and there's several things that are very important for us to do right now. One of them is getting Juan Mendez to come inspect our prisons. Juan Mendez is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, and he's put a request in to come investigate prisons both in California and Louisiana and I think in Pennsylvania or wherever else he's allowed to go. And we need to put pressure on the State Department to approve his request and let him come in. Once he comes in, he only comes in based on his own special conditions, some of them being that he can go into any prison at any time, talk to any prisoner in any housing unit. Right now, when they're letting people go visit Pelican Bay, they're not letting them go talk to the people that are in the short corridor. They're only letting them talk to certain people. So he would be able to come in and actually investigate what is actually going on and put out a report that would detail all of it. And this is really important, so we need to put pressure on the State Department. Our coalition, the Prisoner Hunger Strike Solidarity Coalition, that is based in the Bay Area and that meets every week in Oakland, will be putting out a campaign soon to kind of galvanize a national movement to start putting pressure on the State Department to do this. We are also looking for people to be advocates. Since the hunger strike, there's been a lot of retaliation happening to the guys that participated. One of the instances I mentioned was the ink club and the food. There's also been a lot of prevention of medical care. A lot of these people, they went on hunger strike for 60 days. They're already older. A lot of them have chronic healthcare conditions, and this really wreaked havoc on their bodies, not having food for 60 days. And a lot of it, we don't even know the damage that's been done because they haven't had the proper medical tests. A lot of people are suffering from head problems, constant dizziness, fatigue, fainting. Some of them are having heart problems. Some of them are having other problems with their intestines, and none of this is being addressed. We're right now starting to form an advocates network where we'll get people and we'll match them up with people that need advocacy, and we'll have advocates on the outside that are constantly calling in and checking up on them and making sure that they're okay. This is really important. We've seen that individual advocacy actually helps, gets medical tests taken care of, gets retaliation to stop, and family members alone can't do it. So we need other people to be able to support us. There's also been legislative hearings that have been happening. On October 9th, there was a legislative hearing in Sacramento that kind of set the stage for what we hope is going to be legislation pushed next year in California to really address some of these issues. I haven't seen legislators this receptive to legislation in a very long time, so we need to capitalize on this moment. There's going to be other hearings coming up in the next few months in Sacramento and possibly in Los Angeles too. So if people could just stay connected with us, stay connected with our coalition. It's the Prisoner Hunger Strike Solidarity Coalition. You just search California Hunger Strikes, we're the first website that pops up. And stay connected with us and see how you could fit in. There's also, I didn't bring the flyer with me, but Sharon Martinez has the Human Rights Pen Pal program, which is another really good way to get involved, especially if you're kind of limited on time. And this will help you facilitate a one-on-one correspondence with a prisoner inside who's politically minded and wants a pen pal to write to, and there's a lot of support that goes into this and a lot that comes out of it, both for the pen pal and for the person inside. So please take advantage of that program. It's a great program, and stay connected with us and help, please, because the hunger strike in 2013 only happened because we didn't capitalize off the momentum of the 2011 hunger strikes. The prisoners should not have to go on another hunger strike for us to keep paying attention. The hunger strike was as much for the prison officials as it was for the activists, because truth be told, all the people that were involved in 2011, by the end of 2012, they were not around anymore. And we need to stay involved. We need to end this practice. We need to abolish solitary confinement, not just in California, but in the whole country. Thank you.